I'm so excited to be here. My name's Julie Chadwick. I'm a managing partner at DENTSU CREATIVE based in Manchester. So looking after 50 very talented individuals in Manchester, but also working across offices in the UK. Probably worth saying that I've spent about half my very long career as a client as well as an agency. So I'm looking forward to bringing that dual perspective to the conversation. And now over to Emma.
Thank you very much. Yep, unmuted. Hi, my name is Emma. I call myself a change optician. What that means is I help people to look at their organizations differently, in particular helping managers to do work in ways that are less wasteful, much more engaging, drive out fear and create joy in the workplace, because it's the right thing to do, but also because it makes much better business. And I'm going to pass over now to Malin.
Hi, thank you. So I'm Malin Cunningham and I run Hattrick. We're a content marketing agency in Manchester, and we help clients unpick all the complex stuff that's going on in the world, such as, little things like climate change and diversity and inclusion and so on and so forth, and help them understand that better. And we're quite a small business. There's only 8 of us, but it's got its own challenges when it comes to all things culture, etc. So, which is obviously what we're here to talk about.
Thanks for that, Malin. Yeah, so we've got a whole range of folk. Not only do we have the immense and deep organisational psychological wisdom of Emma, Dr. Emma, in fact, Dr. Emma, I like to say doctor because I'm not one, but also we've got a range of people based from smaller businesses, and your flock, we specialise actually in helping smaller businesses rather than large organisations. But also, Judy didn't really say there how successful she's been in growing agencies and then moving on as well. If you don't know, that's totally fine, but please do contact every single one of our speakers individually on LinkedIn. Not so much that you harass them, of course, because they're actually very busy people as well, but I know they're also very lovely people, and I'm sure that they'll talk to you, or at least reply back at very least. Anyway, I've worked in the marketing creative agencies for many years, which is how I know of Judy from years and years ago, which I'm a massive fan. But I do know that sort of getting to the age I am now, that the world has changed, isn't it? Post-pandemic, the world has changed. We're in a whole new world. We all know this, and I have the joy of talking about the future of work and other stuff, and that's what I get paid to do, as well as working with your flock. But actually, it's even without the pandemic, the world of work was going to change. It was continually changing. It always is. It's not the same as 20 years ago. Marketing and creative is not the same. It became very massive. Okay, I'll promise myself I wouldn't rant, but the point is things have changed. Yeah, and now because of post-pandemic, it's massively changed. They say 10 years of transformation happen in a year. I think it's more than that. If you look at what's now happening, it's much more. And as my friend Tom Cheesewright rightly says in his great book about high frequency change, this is the slowest rate of change that we're ever going to have. You think it's fast, you ain't seen nothing yet. Yeah, that is the reality of our lives. So I suppose bringing that back into the marketing and creative sector, do we feel, as the panel, do we feel that perhaps people have fallen out of love a little bit with the sector? It's something that I feel personally. We work with a lot of creative agencies, but I also know a lot of bosses and a lot of leaders in this world. And I suppose we've got more challenges than I think we've ever had in this sector. We've got more opportunities as well. It's exciting, don't get me wrong. I think we've also got more challenges. So I suppose that's kind of my first question is, what can agencies do to kind of improve? Is it as bad as it seems out there? Because I today work with the MPA as well and other organisations, and it seems there's a lot of challenges. So how do we improve this employee retention piece? What can we do next as leaders in our organisations? I'm going to pass this on to Malin first, because I think I promised I would do that. So,
so I think yes, it is challenging, but I don't think the agency or the marketing world is the only sector that's experiencing it. I think it's across the board. I genuinely do. And like you said, there's a huge paradigm shift going on, isn't there? So there's the generational things, like I'm not 20 either, and it's very hard, I think, for people that have grown up in our kind of agency world, where it was like work hard, play hard, the good stuff. We had a quick chat about this. Was like the having beanbags and ping pong tables type thing. That's how you were rewarded, and lots of parties, etc. And it's just not you know, what it's just not the culture anymore, is it? And it's that adjustment, and I think it's hard in any sector. And certainly the way that we've taken that is thinking more about, you know, what else can we bring? So even thinking from a personal perspective, having a broader purpose to what we do. So, you know, you go to work and you feel like you're doing something beyond just, you know, either if you're working for somebody, lining their pocket, so that might be how you feel about it, or just putting hours into something that doesn't feel that meaningful. And maybe that's one of the challenges we have in marketing, that maybe that doesn't feel as meaningful as it once did. I don't know, that's a question maybe with somebody else, but that's why we've gone down this route of having a purpose-driven business where, you know, we're delivering against some goals of our own. So helping people understand what's happening to the climate, or, you know, the diversity and inclusion piece, etc.
So in your smaller agency, because your employee brand is really key to you, you've also managed to create a brand new offering in there, which is a bit more purpose driven, which of course you can do as a small agency, because you can be the voice and make the change and, you know, really bang the drum for diversity and inclusion. That is in no way saying that larger agencies can't, by the way. It's just saying it might be easier from an organizational point of view to do so. And so I'm gonna pass over to Julie now, even though I think I really should have gone for Emma because she was nodding more. But I was planning Julie.
God, am I not nodding enough? I
know, just I was going to go to you next.
No, I was just going to build on that by saying, I think one of the most fundamental changes that came out of the pandemic, which I think has benefited us, especially in Manchester, was the flexibility and home working. And I think the way it's worked for us is location. Now you can dial up when it's beneficial, because we're in an amazing city, but it doesn't need to be a disadvantage anymore. And that's both from a client perspective. So we have talent in Manchester now working on some of the biggest global brands there is. And that would not realistically have happened if you'd have gone back 10 years ago necessarily. So I think that kind of geographical agnostic kind of nature of where we are now is brilliant. And also to keep talent, giving them the best opportunities in terms of working on brilliant brands and doing great work. You know, that's what drives people in our industry. So I think it's almost created more of a level playing field. For operators in Manchester, we're in a great position because obviously we're part of this global network now. So it's twofold for us. But I think that is absolutely key in terms of us attracting and retaining the best talent, because I think that, you know, the days of ping pong tables keeping people motivated are long gone. But if you can come to an agency and do the best work of your career, then that is massively motivating.
Brilliant.
Emma now.
Yeah, I say perfect time to pass over to Emma. We're talking about organisation brilliance.
Okay, yeah, so I agree with the other two speakers. I think Malin's absolutely right around purpose. So in our own little organisation, sometimes trying to define the purpose of our mainstream business, which is about, you know, inclusion and diversity and process improvement, things like that, it is kind of compelling. But we also have a foundation that we want to establish this year, which has a much deeper purpose, which is about child loss. And I think, you know, when you look at CSR and the way that organizations are starting to use CSR, it's really important to link that into things that are actually meaningful to your employees and that you can commit to on a long term. So, you know, much like the table tennis and the bean bags, I think that those sort of CSR projects of where we're going to go and paint a scout hut for the day, they don't really have meaning in the same way. And I'm noticing, especially across Greater Manchester, really long-term, strong partnerships between corporates and the third sector, and actually making things work in those ways. So I think that's really important. And then I guess in terms of being a place that's attractive, as Julie said, it's a global world now. People can work anywhere for anyone doing pretty much anything. So we just need to make sure that the places that we invite people to work in are inviting, and that means having meaning. It means getting rid of all the tut that gets in the way of doing your best work, because it's just really frustrating. Even like if your computer turns off randomly, or something doesn't load, or you haven't got the right version of software, those things, like those hygiene factors, after a way they really bug you. But we also all know that the main reason that people move from one company to another is because of the relationship with their line manager. So there's a real heavy duty on frontline managers and middle managers to get really good at this stuff. And I'm not seeing that happen yet. I'm seeing lots of pretty initiatives on LinkedIn. Yesterday, I saw a beautiful photo of a room full of white blokes on a DEI training course, which was very inspiring. You know, it's not just enough to talk about it. It's not just enough to have it in the boardroom. This actually has to be worked down through all levels of the business, and it has to be real at your manager's level. You'll feel good about work when you've got a good relationship with your manager, your work is meaningful, and you haven't got getting in the way.
Yeah, and that massively links into, you know, why your flock actually exists, and that's kind of the point, is that if we can help. I said this morning, kind of middle managers, but of course it's team leaders. I think we used to call them middle managers, proves how old I am. But you know, but if you can help the team leaders who aren't in the CD leadership team but are actually running teams, you can help them by saving their time, by giving them the data they need about the motivations of their team. Then they can do that kind of the heavy lifting and emotional work of being a better person and a nicer person. And the reason why I invested in your flock is because I'm not particularly emotionally intelligent. So it's something that I needed, because I was a terrible manager and back in the day, drinking loads and going out and partying. Yeah, that was me. That's why I had the agency. That's why the agency failed as well, by the way. So it's a very personal point for me. But I never grew because I wasn't emotionally. Anyway, not about me. Anyway, point being is that's where it comes from. But the other thing I wanted to very quickly touch on, because I know we don't like to talk about it because it's a bit of a hot potato and it's a bit of a sore point, and it's not diversity and inclusion as people might be thinking. It's actually around pay. It's actually around money, because as we see with law, especially, we work in 4 or 5 different sectors. We specialize in marketing, creative, small teams, but pay in law, especially, lawyers are now being paid 15% more and 20% more than they were last year, and this kind of drive to keep them. We see lots of data in the fact that potentially backfires. But what I want to chat to you or ask the panel now is are we seeing that move in the marketing creative sector, and what do we think will happen because of it? I'm going to pass this on to Malin, mainly because she's already unmuted, so I don't have to click a button.
That's how you get in, being unmuted. So I think pay obviously is important, and obviously there's, again, beyond our sector, there is, you know, obviously huge conversations about that and how you keep up with the cost of living and all of that kind of stuff. But I think it's only one part of it. You know, that's not. I don't think that on its own is motivation enough. You know, if that is the only motivation, you're likely to be dealing with somebody who's just going to move around for that reason. You know, you can't. I think it's hard to, you know, motivate and keep somebody like that going. It's more about understanding, as you just said, is understanding individual motivations and aligning them with what you're trying to do. I think it's. I think as a leader, and again, obviously, like you said, you know, I run a smaller business, so, you know, obviously very close to the purpose of what we're trying to deliver, etc. But I think it's finding that alignment with people that's going to motivate them more, you know, than the pay. But obviously, that has to be, you know, you want to get to a place where that's a hygiene factor, that, you know, you have to be paid enough so that you feel valued and that you can obviously lead the kind of life you want, but it shouldn't be the only motivating factor.
Yeah, I would absolutely echo that. And I think everybody wants to be paid, you know, competitively, fairly. I think the conversations that I'm having with people, you know, are around, okay, but what's my progression plan? And how can I get to the next level? What does the next level look like? And I think these are really refreshing conversations to have. I think during the pandemic, probably we ended up in a survive mode mentally, all of us. And I think now we're definitely moving into that thrive kind of, which is, it's great to see. But I think it's a big package, as Malin said. It's about reward and recognition, but it's also about progression, and it's also about flexibility, you know. And I think gone are the days when you have to ask permission if you're going to work from home. It's the onus is on us now to kind of develop opportunities for people to congregate so they can get together and enjoy that experience. And that might not even be formally working. It's more around collaboration, and then almost using that time when they're at home to kind of get on with, you know, the kind of the thinking work, if you like. And organizations that get that and can deliver that flexibility, I think that's far more important to people these days than anything else. I think going back to that rigid 5 days in the office just seems a bit bizarre now, doesn't it?
Doesn't it just? And it's amazing. There's a brilliant bit of work done by Bruce Daisley uncovered. Don't know if everyone's seen this. I'm a massive data geek, so I do love a good data point. That there's actually a strict correlation between how non-diverse your board is and how much you want to get back into the office. There's a literal correlation between the two. You go and look for it. It's hilariously fascinating, but also quite obvious. Of course, when you look at it, you go, oh, well, that explains that. But there's now data. It's not just a feeling. It's absolute correlation between the two. But I know also there's much better people with data than I am. And I'm going to pass on to Emma at this moment about that engagement piece around workplace. I know you've done not only your whole life of researching this subject and being brilliant at it, but I know there's a particularly pertinent thing you wanted to discuss this morning, or this afternoon.
Press the button. There we go. Got there. Thank you. And I'll also come to Bev's point as well, because I think quite a lot of what the other two speakers have said around that flexibility and the wanting to progression and knowing where you're going is really important, not just to millennials, but to all of us, and including to older people who are coming back into the workplace. It's like, okay, well, why? I'm working with somebody now on a project. He's retired 3 times, but the projects are just too exciting, so he just keeps coming back in, and he keeps promising his wife he would definitely retire this time. So yeah, back to that purpose thing. Yeah, what the research shows, and this is really cool research, it was started by ICI in the 70s and 80s. It shows that actually what's really important is the climate that we work in as a team. So climate is about how it feels to be here, whereas culture is how we do things around here. And this work was corroborated by Sheffield Uni and Henley Business School and Manchester Business School. So there's a whole load of people that have gone and put stuff into this research. And what's really interesting is that a 10% change in climate, i.e. it feels 10% better to work here, results in a 20% improvement. A 10% improvement in leadership behaviour leads to a 20% improvement in the climate, which leads up to 40% improvement in productivity and results, which is nuts. And I think that's where your flock is really helpful, because what it actually does is help leaders and managers to understand the types of things that aren't really working for their people. And it is stuff around money, but it's also things around, do I have a locus of control? Do I get to influence decisions? Do I get properly recognized in the language that makes sense to me when I've done something well? And I think what's really powerful about what our experience of using Your Flock was really understanding how different people feel that recognition in different ways. So for me, it's all about the customer. That's what I care about, is how does the customer feel, and periodically I'll sort of stab myself in the hand and remind myself that my team members are really important and my health is really important and stuff like that. But for me, it's that. Whereas I've got a colleague on the management team who's not really given monkeys about the customer. He's just very interested in ideas and research and all of those types of things. So really understanding ourselves, who we are, and our line manager understanding that, and us being in a climate that makes us feel safe and secure and able to engage safely is really, really, really important.
Well, I'm going to pass over to Malin on this one, mainly because of thank you very much, Emma, for those lovely words about your. That's exactly why we invented it. Exactly why. But we're just one part of the equation, of course. We're just one. In fact, I always say to people, Your Flock is a conversation starter. It doesn't actually have the answers. It's not meant to. They come from the employees and from the engagement, and that's the point. The people have the answers. It's Your Flock just gives them a voice so they can do this stuff and we can change the world. But anyway, there's obviously other things you can do apart from using Your Flock, and they become much better businesses because they do so. So I'm going to pass on to Malin now and just ask the core question. So what are the things that you've done in your agency that have really kind of given people that sense of, not even a sense of ownership, but that it's got the higher engagement levels and it's changed the culture? What are things that you've done, the positive things rather than negative? What have you got on the positives?
Yeah, so I'm actually Swedish. So there's been, it's interesting, I lived here for well over 20 years, so it's not like I've just arrived. But even with that cultural difference plays out in lots of different ways, and I think I underestimated that for a really long time. so just to explain, Sweden is group orientated, so it's all about the greater good, whereas obviously the UK is the opposite of that. And in Sweden, people are very non-directional. It's about making decisions, and then everybody goes away and delivers their piece. Whereas here, people are looking for more direction. So finding that balance has been quite challenging, you know, even though I've been here for a long time. So and then culturally, one of the ways in which you sort of keep in step with everybody is we've got something called fika, which is basically, it's coffee, but coffee and cake. And we do that here at Hattrick as well. So that sounds really simple, but it's about having touch points, informal touch points on a regular basis where you come together. And in Sweden, it happens probably twice a day. And it's fairly rigid in terms of it happens at certain times, and everybody down tools and go and sit down. But the beauty, and we actually only do it once a week. We probably should do it more, but we do it once a week. And it's amazing because all sorts of things come up, and it's an informal environment. There isn't an agenda as such. It's just about chatting and you know, understanding where people are at in their day-to-day, and you know, both home and work, etc. And that's unlocked quite a lot for us, and help. You know, we know each other on a different level, and if you know, as you keep that up, people become more relaxed. It's a bit weird, you know, obviously not in Sweden, but here it just probably feels a bit weird to start with. There's no alcohol involved, obviously. It's just coffee and cake, and somebody has to bring. Somebody brings cake every time, homemade usually. So it's just you know, a nice way of doing that. So that's an example of.
I love it. We do a similar thing, but kind of with lots of different companies. Our coffee and cake thing that we do every month, just at your flop. It just made me smile, Malin, because I'm half Swedish, which no one can see. I don't know why people don't recognise the half Swedish, half Jamaican. They don't see the Swedish. Apparently, I stand in a very Swedish way, but there you go. That's a different conversation. But that Swedish principle, and I'm with you totally, by the way, and the whole bringing people together. And there is a cultural piece, isn't there? There is a difference in Europe, different things. But I'm going to say, from a Manchester point of view, I love the idea that you have that downing of tools and informally getting together without an agenda, because that is a culture shift, isn't it? And getting to know people in a deeper point. And I imagine that Julie's going to add to that with the wonderful things that you have done, not only in the past.
I am, but I'm not going to lie, I like an agenda. So this is a step forward for me. This is something that we might need to
go.
let the agenda go. But we do a similar thing, and we've been playing with the hybrid model, because what we found is that people were all coming in on different days, and actually you want to have a mass of people enjoying each other on the same days. So we did a bit of a pilot before Christmas where everyone came in on like a Tuesday and a Thursday, and it worked really well. So we built the cadence of meetings around that. So Tuesday we have a bit of breakfast together, share, there is an agenda, but we share work and share kind of how we all are. And then Thursday similar, but on the last Thursday of the month, so every other Thursday, then we have a kind of proper hour and a half together, where we kind of like pull out notable kind of people who've done great work or really worked hard, and have a bit of fun, and then we all kind of go out together. I think socializing, getting to know each other, we've a lot of us have worked together for a very long time. So it feels like a real team, a real, like, I hate to use the word gang because it's got like negative connotations, but we're a bit of a tribe. And I think many agencies in Manchester are, and there's something wonderful about that because it gives you a sense of belonging. And I think going back into the office, even if it's only a couple of days a week, has allowed some of sort of the newer people who've joined the agency to really feel that, because I think that is very hard to kind of start from scratch when you're purely online. But it's all about kind of getting the balance and finding what works for you.
Well, I think, you know, with the people that we work with at your flop, we hear, because we specialise with marketing and the creative industry, exactly what I've heard. Yeah. So when, because I was quite surprised, you see, because I've done remote work forever. I've been a consultant. I've remote work forever. So when it happened, I was like, yeah, I told you it would happen. I didn't know the pandemic would happen. It was a terrible reason for it to happen. But when you have this sudden digital transformation, I've been telling people, you don't have to go down to London to do the sales. It's just a Zoom meeting. What are you doing? Why are we destroying the environment? We have the technology. No, you have to go down, see the whites of their eyes and shake their hands. Really? I mean, then they'll get drunk. I mean, really? Anyway, that's the point. Anyway, that was back in the day. Now, of course, it's changed. But what I was quite shocked by is actually how much that collaboration piece in marketing and in the creative agencies, how much you actually do need to consciously gather together. how much it is about collaboration, really almost more than anything else. Our culture is tremendously important. And if you just, there's a great book by someone called Pullman, but it's called Bowling Alone. We cannot bowl alone. This is his point. And I think it's a slightly deeper one for companies, because really companies are collections of people who like and trust each other, and that gain rapport to then create an objective. And we sometimes forget that. We sometimes forget that, and certainly we can. I think there's someone in the crowd today that was talking about servant leadership, which is a model that I think is massively important. How do you create that environment where everyone's happy? You don't have to be like a dad, and that's why I always worry when Judy. I thought you were going to say family, and I was going to say, oh, sugar lumps, because that's my biggest red flag. But like a family, you have no boundaries, and people abuse each other all the time, and you can't do anything, you can't leave. That doesn't sound great. Sorry, that's just a personal bugbear. But a gang sounds much better, even though you're right, it has connotations. So I suppose my question really, and it goes back to everyone, especially I'm going to start off with Emma, if that's okay, Emma, on that kind of servant leadership, employee engagement piece. What are things that, apart from don't be a dick, which of course is the classic, and I'm going to say it so you don't have to. Don't be that bloke, which I used to be. Apart from that, what else can leaders do? What are the top tips you can give people who might be leading small teams or small businesses or big businesses right now?
Mm-hmm. So the two people I'm going to pull up on, and one is a guy called Barry Oshry, who talked about the power of the middles, and that's exactly what the others have been talking about and what you've been reinforcing about the importance of those sideways peer-to-peer relationships, so that you don't end up with silos. I do disagree with you. Companies are not places where people like and trust each other. Companies are generally places where they don't like and don't trust each other, and so they talk to their boss, who goes up to their boss, who goes sideways to go to their boss, down to there, and so on and so forth. The reason that people don't like and trust each other is they don't spend very much time together. So one of the key things a manager can do is make sure that their people actually spend time together, whether that's online or in person. That's really, really important. And there are lots of organizational forces that pull the middle apart. So actually, as a top in a business, the most important thing you can do is bring the middles together. The second thing, which is, it's kind of like don't be a dick really, but there are 3 ways to do leadership quite badly, and I do these 40% of the time. Okay, so 60% of the time at the moment I lead reasonably well, according to the feedback from my team, but 40% of the time I'm pretty rubbish. And the 3 ways we do it badly is either thinking that we're being assertive but actually being aggressive. That's my one. JFDI, or second thing that people do is they just disappear. So you get leaders who are missing in action, or they'll go into a little management bunker and talk about carpet tiles because they haven't got the energy and the mental capacity to deal with the bigger question and the crisis in front of them, so they might disappear. And the third thing, which I really can't stand, is the leadership behavior which is just so nice and says yes to everything and promises promotions that they can't deliver, and then says, I'm really sorry, somebody else wouldn't let that happen, it wasn't my fault, I tried. And that's called lying, isn't it, in my world? So really great behavior is when you care about getting things done and you care about your people and you are able to do those 2 things simultaneously. That's quite difficult to do. Most managers, the data from the last 40 years across the globe says most managers only manage to do that about half the time. If you manage to do that 70% of the time, your people will think that you are like the world's best leader. Humans are quite forgiving, so you can actually be a dick 30% of the time, so long as the rest of the time you are very clearly caring about your people, caring about getting things done and caring about your people. The more you do that, the better the climate, the better people feel, the better they deliver. But it's not about being wet and nice and just saying yes to everything. Being collaborative, achieving results is not just about being nice. It's about focusing on what needs to be done and caring about your people at the same time.
Brilliantly brings in my my dick-like behaviour, occasionally interrupting people. I managed to not do that then, which I was very proud of.
So proud of you. Yeah.
Thank you. We did actually have to do a bit of training on that before, didn't we?
Should we just all pause and look at the man getting the behaviour? Well done.
No, the whole point was to pass on to Julie. That was just a segue point to pass on to Julie. I was going to say, who is brilliant more than 70% of the time, but I thought that was a bit too gushing, so I didn't. And said, I'll just do it as a question. What other kind of leadership traits do you see in your organisation? Obviously, much larger organisation. If you're looking at team leaders, what other things do you look for? Because you can then see when they do that kind of behaviour, it makes the culture better. It is a question.
Yeah, I think I'd go back to what Emma said in terms of it's really important to have a framework. So we have a career framework, and there's leadership values, which we apply to everyone, because everyone fundamentally leads in some way. And I think, and everyone's measured against those behaviours. So I think it's an environment where you can call out those kind of behaviours comfortably, which I think is really, really key. I think also, just going back to that trust point, you can't do great creative work if you don't trust the people you're working with. It's just an impossibility, because the whole process of being a creative is putting yourself out and being really vulnerable. So I think it matters more to get that right in our industry, if you want to do great work than anywhere else. But I think we don't always get it right. And I think it's, from a leadership point of view, I think listening, and when you haven't got it right, listening, and then showing that you are taking action, even if it takes a while to get to that action, is absolutely key. Earlier on in my career, I always remember being in moments where, when you do put your hand up and say, I've got this feedback, to hear somebody then tell you why you're wrong, contextualize it, or just simply do nothing, can be massively disempowering. So I think that whole listening is really, really super important, but actually then acting on it. And if you can't act on it, explaining why is absolutely key to bringing any form of trust wherever you work. And I think that's what we try and do. As I say, we don't always get it right, but we're trying.
Well, and that's the thing, isn't it? As Emma was brilliantly alluding to, you don't have to be right all the time. In fact, if that's not really possible, and that most probably is a leadership fault, in fact, when you think you should be right all the time. I mean, one of the principles of your flock is that the leaders don't actually have the answers. They need to unearth the answers in other folk and then amalgamate together and then lead because of it. But that's a different thing. And that's, of course, the power of feedback, isn't it? I don't want to be as cheesy as to say feedback is the breakfast of champions from old Ken Blanchard, because everyone's heard that in the 1980s. It just makes me smile because it's one of my favourite cheesy sayings. So there you go. Sorry, always makes me smile. But it's true, because you want that feedback, don't you? You can now, after this, you can give them the feedback. That's a terrible thing about feedback. Anyway, we don't always get it right, and I'm not going to say in any way that, Malin, you've got, there's anything you've done wrong in your own. But of course, I could give you 100 in my own world of why my agency failed, but that would be in the past. But I want to talk about an agency that's exciting, that's exciting and that's succeeding. And just, is there anything that you've done which has kind of made the ship wobble at any way? Or what I don't want to do is do a name and shame where we all go, oh, that agency did that, which I don't think is going to help anybody.
No, absolutely. Well, I think, everybody makes mistakes, don't they? And I think, sort of going back to what I was talking about before in terms of, coming from a different culture, but I don't think it necessarily has to be a cultural thing. It could just as much be about your own, profile and, actually understanding how you're operating and how you're not operating. So you were talking about, obviously, flock helps you understand people's motivations, etc., and recognizing that yours are not the same as the rest of the teams. And I think, one of the things that I've fallen foul of quite a few times is trying to apply how I'm motivated and the kind of things that I would like to know to the team. So sometimes oversharing, sometimes undersharing. And actually, by doing that, alienating the team. So, when things are, so during the pandemic, for instance, when things are really quite hard, well, they were for us anyway, it was really tough. We were trying to, just trying to get to a place where we were breaking even and can continue as a business, and just oversharing that with the team, and that's actually really scary if you're not used to that kind of information. And whereas I thought that I was just being really transparent and actually scaring a few people off instead of doing the other. What I wanted to do was empower and help people, bring people on this journey. So and that all goes back to not understanding how you're different from the rest of the team and what motivates them and how you get them going. So yeah, that's and that happens obviously still. That's part of the journey of learning. And one of the things that I was thinking before when we were talking is around, because there's such a big shift, we're going through this huge shift, and it's obviously still ongoing. It's being quite open about the fact that we're all learning, aren't we? Like, we're still in the middle of it. This is really hard. Everything is changing, we're changing, and the next generation that's coming through is different, and actually it's quite hard to navigate. So and it goes back to listening, genuinely listening, doesn't it, and understanding that people's motivations are going to be different, and not everybody will align with where you're trying to get to, and that's okay.
Yeah, one of the things that always amazes me, this is not anything to do with your flock or team dynamics, but it slightly is this whole, we had the pandemic, yeah, which I think was so bad that people actually forget that it existed, because people just, how have you been? Yeah, I've been fine. What about the 2 years of being locked away? And so probably traumatic, no one wants to talk about it. And there's a great, Emma, this might be wrong, by the way, so please do pull me up if I'm wrong, but there's something like, if something happens for 2 years, it might take 5 years to get over it. It takes a double the amount and a bit to actually do it, even if you're processing stuff. Yeah. So I think Malin's absolutely right. We're going through this, but we don't give ourselves time sometimes at work, because everyone's like, oh, it's back to normal now. Great, crack on. It's like, what are we talking about? I'm still, so that traumatic bit, I don't think we've given ourselves enough time. And that leads into this next bit, this whole new world of hybrid and remote. Yeah, because it is a new world. Like before, it was 4% of people that were doing remote work. This is like 5 or 6 years ago. Yeah. And then it became like everyone apart. I'm talking about purely in the knowledge industries, by the way, not everywhere. I understand pilots couldn't do it remotely. They can now, by the way, so don't start with me on that one. Anyway, so AI can do it now, so don't get too clever. Anyway, it's not the point. Right. So 4% was doing it. And then it became like 4% of people who wanted to go back to the office full time. Yeah, so that is a paradigm shift. It's huge. Now, even if it goes back, you can actually see the data. You see the data, and it's not going back. People are doing 3 days, 2 days, and everyone's like, well, that's the new normal. But actually, that's massively different. That's hugely different to what we were doing before. 9 to 5 all the time, massively. So I suppose that's my question, and it's to Julie first, if that's okay, and then most probably Malin, and then most probably finish off with the organisational genius of Emma. So what my question is, with the hybrid world that we're now going to be in, how do you make sure that you don't have multiple cultures happening at the same time? And by the way, I say this knowing there's no absolute answers, because we're all still going through the process.
That's quite, sorry, I was waiting to be unmuted. I think that's quite interesting, because in some ways you don't want multiple cultures, but I think having multiple communities within an organisation is a great thing. So for example, we represent lots of different specialisms, from creative, strategy, advertising, entertainment. And actually what we're trying to do is build communities across location, if you like. And I think it's great if they have their own culture, they feel a bigger sense of belonging maybe to that community than they do to people in their location. I think it's only a problem if that culture becomes a negative culture, if you know what I mean. But I also think having and I think that's something that Malin brought up earlier, I think making sure that people feel that they want to be good, but also do good, because it's quite easy working from home if you're really senior in your job and you know what you're doing. But if you're starting out in your career, I learned like 80% of what I did on the job, sitting next to somebody who'd been doing it for longer. So I think encouraging people to kind of almost give back, and that sometimes does mean coming into the office and spending time with people and sharing the brilliant kind of talents that you have with others. So I think that's key, and building a culture and a group of people who have that sense of kind of belonging and wanting to do that is really key to making hybrid work. Because we all need connection, don't we, to function. So I think works just finding a catalyst of doing that, which works for most people.
I've left that pause there because I thought it just needed to sink in for everyone how brilliant that was. Also gives my video editor the point where I know he's going to make me. I'm like, that's the pause. That's the take. Hey, that was the fantastic. I'm going to pass on to Malin as well for her wisdom on this, because I don't think you with your company, is it hybrid and remote, or is everyone come back to the office? What's your situation with your team?
It's been interesting because I think so. Originally, we actually, we all came back quite quickly, and we were all working from the office more or less all the time. And then since then, that's changed. I think because basically the team was sick of being at home. That's the truth. And we were all like, everybody wanted to be back together and separate. It was either because they were living in flats that were just not very small flats or shared flats or shared spaces where it wasn't a good environment for working, basically, or having young kids, same thing. So initially everybody came back, but then as time has gone on, that has changed to the extent where actually only in the last few months we've just come into a pattern where we're 3 days in the office, so Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and I think, again, going back to what I said before about sort of being a bit, or recognizing that this is still an ongoing process. I think there is an element of, I think we all need to be together and have some rules around when people are in and when they're not, but obviously with some flexibility, because as we all know, things happen. But not being afraid to have those parameters in place, but then listening to people as you go along. I mean, it sounds like you're kind of doing both, but I think that's really important, because as a business, you do need to come together. Like, obviously our team is a lot smaller than Julie's, but even with that, you know, we still have people that are wired very differently. You know, somebody who's a designer to a copywriter and then a strategist, you know, and we all operate in different ways. And I think it's being clear about and have some structure around where certain types of work happen. So, you know, trying to do more of the meeting and getting together when you're in the office. It sounds obvious, but it's not actually that obvious in terms of how it plays out. You know, people still come in and try and do the deep work because that's just how it's fallen. Because obviously the clients don't always, you know, they don't always plan it the way that you planned it. You know, they give you the work and the deadline changes, and all of a sudden you find that you're doing that on a day where we're all meant to be together. So, yeah, I think flexibility is important, but it's having some kind of parameters around it. And I think it will take time to get to a place where that it all feels really normal and natural in a way that I don't think it does yet.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, is that we've got to give ourselves time, and perhaps more importantly, sometimes in certain organisations, that middle, you know, the middle managers or the team leaders, we've got to give them and this is a big one for me. I've bashed my drum on this, even though it feels sometimes that I kind of rail against that middle management. I actually don't think we've given them the tools and the technology and the time to do their bit. You know, 90% of them don't think they've got the time to do their job properly. Well, most of the time they've been recruited because they were good at their job, but not good as managers. Well, we've got to give them the skills to be better leaders, but we've got to give them the time to do it as well. And then I think we've got to give technology. And someone on the call, I just looked in the chat, and they were talking that it's tricky to have that way of knowing when everyone's coming in and the scheduling thing. But my whole point with this, and by the way, this is a bigger piece about office stuff, which I've been asked to go and talk about somewhere else. But that's the thing about the office place, isn't it? You know, people aren't coming in all the time. And when is John coming in? And when is Jill coming in? And when's someone else coming in? But actually, that's what technology is meant to be for. You're meant to have collaborative pieces of technology to be able to help that. You know, the fact we don't know everyone's individual motivations, and that's now more important, because we used to be able to put our arms around them and know everyone in the centralized place called the office. Well, that we can't moan about that not existing as strongly as it was. That campfire is gone. We've now got multiple campfires. And Julie's brilliant point, I think I must probably haven't explained your flock well enough, because the idea of your flock is that it's in those individual teams. So teams all have individual cultures. And when we're used in an agency, we're not just used en masse. I mean, if it's 10 people, maybe, but if it's 40, it's 4 teams. And I would just say, and I'm sure everyone will already know this, and Emma will know this more than I, but, you know, team dynamics, if you've got a team of 15 people, it's most probably a few too many. You know, there's always a point where it should be 2 teams. Yeah. So I think if we could all start recognizing that teams are important, it's really important that we do, and then honor those differences in the teams. There you go. I'll get there in the end. And so that leads into the point I was going to ask about Emma, which is honoring those differences and how do we get the most out of people and performance. Because I know you've got loads of work. I know you've got an hour's worth of work on it, but I'll give you some time to do some brilliance now, and I'll make sure that I am paused before I'll do the plug. There you go.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so, you know, earlier I was talking about climate and how it feels to work here. And absolutely, there are 3 major strands that impact upon that. So the first one of those is about having routines and rhythms. So in my world, I come from engineering originally. So we love a bit of collaborative planning and production control. But all we're really talking about is a rhythm of planning and then reviewing and seeing how things are going. So that's really important. The second one is around organizational structure, which is really annoys me. I wanted it to not be about organizational structure, but annoyingly the science disagrees. And actually the span of control and the number of people in a team really does have an impact upon how it feels to work there. So everyone on the call who's ever experienced having a one-to-one relationship with a line manager, they will have micromanaged you, no matter how gorgeous they were, because they were trying to demonstrate that they deserve the title of manager. And similarly, if you've ever worked in a team where you've got one person with about 12 people reporting to them, they basically are only going to pay attention if you are on fire, or throwing matches around, or, you know, in other ways causing problems. So those are two things. And then the third thing is that leadership behavior, and really understanding how to do that behavior. And I think in this VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous world, it can feel a bit bewildering for leaders. And you know, how am I supposed to deal with all of this stuff? And I loved Malin's beautiful example of wanting to be transparent and open, and then realizing, oh, actually, that's kind of, you know, scared the horses, so to speak. So actually, don't panic. You know, a lot of the work is about learning who we are as ourselves and understanding, you know, am I the sort of person that's comfortable with volatility? In which case, my superpower in the VUCA world is to create a vision and say, look, it seems scary now, but this is the long term, this is where we're going. Or am I somebody who's much more around empathizing and understanding, in which case that's my superpower, and I can use that to help address the uncertainty in the VUCA environment. So we can learn to do all of those things, but it's also really powerful when we're doing the things that cost us the least amount of energy. So, you know, how many times all of us in our careers will have done something that somebody else is better at. I know I've not delegated things because I hated them and I assumed everyone else hated them too. And I've got a sort of masochistic streak, which meant I had to suffer and other people didn't have to suffer, only to discover that they love the thing that I hate doing, whatever that thing is. So understanding ourselves, understanding each other, listening, learning, spending time together. And I definitely think the key learning for me from this session is more coffee, more cake.
Always more coffee, more cake, or more tea. Coffee can be highly stimulating.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I have ADHD, so I can drink coffee until bedtime, makes no difference.
Well, there we go. Okay, well, we may be similar in that respect. Don't give me too much coffee. But I need it because it seems a real shame. I've only got 5 minutes. This could be a whole hour for this next bit. But it does beautifully bring into this whole thing of employee well-being. Okay, yeah, and this whole thing about, I love the point about, you know, delegation's key, and it is, isn't it? And that's really important. You know, you can put yourself under a load of amount of pressure that you didn't need to be, and that's kind of personal well-being. But any employee well-being, I know it's a big trend, and it bloody should be, by the way, because we should all be nicer to each other at work, and mental well-being is hugely important, you know, almost as important as physical, especially in the industry we're in. So I'm going to pass over to Julie on this one because of your larger agency experience in this about well-being. I know it's a big trend, but what are the kind of things that you're doing as a larger agency to help the well-being of your employees? And I'll pass it back on to Malin, and then we'll finish off with Emma at the end, if that's okay.
I think it's such a good thing now that it is so firmly on everyone's agenda. I think in terms of like work-life balance, that's where it starts, you know. And if you look back to some of the initial pandemic working from home, you know, we got into some really bad habits. So I think, you know, personally, it was like getting up and there was nothing else to do, so you just log on. And that's why another reason why I think the moving back to the office, or moving back in part to the office, has been so liberating, because what we're saying to people now is clear your diary on Tuesdays and Thursdays if you can. Don't be doing Teams calls, be having a chat. And I have people coming to me saying, like, I feel like I've not done anything today, but you've chatted to people, you've connected with people, you've collaborated, you've done the fun bits of your job. And that is really valuable. And I think getting that right is really key. I mean, we have lots of initiatives. We're doing 3 days, I think. We get 3 wellbeing days now on top of your holiday, where you're encouraged, 1, we shut everything down and all do it collectively, but 2, to take it your own time. And I think lots and lots of organizations are doing that. I think it sends out brilliant messages. We completely discourage rolling over holiday. We want people to take their holiday, and we're constantly talking to people about taking time off throughout the year rather than leaving it to the end. So it's like, you know, really try and take the time off, even if you're not going on holiday, take time off for yourself. And then there's lots and lots of different initiatives that are different, you know, from yoga to various bits. But I think, again, going back to that ping pong table analogy, You know, fundamentally, it's about, am I in an environment where I feel psychologically safe? You know, can I thrive? And can I have a really healthy life outside of work, which is just as fulfilling and enjoyable? Does work allow me to do that? And I think if you can get those three things right, then you're onto a winner.
Going to pass on to Malin then after such wisdom, and yeah, over to you, Malin.
Yeah, so I think you know, obviously a smaller team, so you know, we don't have all of these things in place, but we've got some of them. But what I would say is that well-being is quite a personal thing, isn't it? So you know, some of our team are a lot of our team are actually working mums, so in terms of flexibility and their well-being, it's a lot around, you know, fitting in with you know, term times and pick up and drop off and all of that, and that's very important to me. That's actually part of the reason that I set the business up all those years ago, because my kids are teenagers flying the nest soon. So but it's recognizing that and giving you know, working mums an opportunity to continue to share their brilliance with the working world and not making that really difficult. But then on the other hand, obviously not everybody is in that pool of people either, and for them it will be something completely different. And I guess, and I know maybe that's easy for me to say because of the size of the business, but it's recognizing that people need different things at different stages in their lives. And you know, for some it will be more of a physical physical well-being, so wanting to go to the gym, etc. For others it will be more about, you know, mental health and having the opportunity to have some time out, or actually needing a reminder to have the time out. Because I think as much as we all want to do that, I think it's easy to get caught up, you know, even if I can look at myself, and you know, you get caught up in all the exciting things that you're doing, and it's actually sometimes somebody needs to remind you that you actually need to have some time out, and you know, you benefit from that. So I don't know if that answers the question, but I think it goes back to the same thing. It's just understanding individuals' motivations and, you know, what they need to stay well, but obviously in the context of a bigger team. And that's what's so challenging about it, isn't it? You know, you're looking at individuals, but also the needs of the business and the wider team. So it's a constant balancing game, isn't it?
No, it is. And I think as businesses grow as well, there becomes another issue with that growth. So the difference between a team of 10 to a team of 20 is a lot different than people might think when you're the team leader or you're the leader of the company. And again, 20 to 30, there's always these age gaps and these moments where there is, and I'm sure Emma can tell us, and we'll be finishing about 2 minutes past, because I want Emma to at least have these last 2 minutes. And it's my fault we started late, so I'm not going to rob her of that moment. But there's obviously organisational moments where there are these straining and testing points, which actually you can most probably find out, because it's usually about numbers. You know, it's actually not that different with each of these different businesses. But anyway, I'm going to pass over to Emma to have the closing words on this, because I know she's got them.
Okay, so there's easy stuff we can do, and it comes from starting to really understand ourselves and starting to understand each other. And one thing you could do straight away is Google Biodex, BIODEX, on the internet, and you'll find lots of free examples. It's a really great thing that you can do with your teams and colleagues. So just a quick thinking around well-being and work and how we work together. I came across a team a couple of months ago, and it turned out that they're all morning people, which would explain why they were falling asleep in their afternoon meetings. So what they did is collectively reorganize their diaries to make sure that it actually worked for all of them. So that's really powerful. Another really simple thing you can do, which is in the book, Be More Pirate, you might decide to put something on your email footer that says, hey, just because I've sent this at 3 o'clock in the morning doesn't mean I expect you to reply to it, or that I'm some kind of superhero. So actually having these conversations, sharing, because we're humans, and this is what AI will never replace, because we're humans, by having the biodex and talking to each other and getting to know each other, that's how we all feel better and how we all perform better and how we can love the places that we work in.
And is there a more profound or better way of summing up today? No, there is not, which is brilliant. What an amazing time. I told you, Emma, genius, wonderful work, loving that. Means I don't have to do it. All I need to do is to thank the speakers. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Malin. Thank you, everyone, for being on the call. I know we ran over a little bit there. My apologies for that. Have a look at, I think it was Biodex that you talked about. There's some stuff in the chat as well. But also, if you have time and if you have the inclination, please do have a look at what we're doing at your flock. Feedback is really important to us as well. If you're on the call and you have a small team of less than 15 people, we'll also let you have access to that for free for 2 weeks. So you get your first feedback report. So you get to know the motivations of your team and you get that first bit of feedback so you can change your business or your company. That was something that I promised because it's a celebration, because Michal just had a baby and we said that that's what we would do. So there you go, living our values of caring and customer focus. There you go, link it all together. So thanks so much to the speakers. Thank you, Malin. Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, everyone, for being here. My name's Dan Sodergren. Come and find me on LinkedIn, and please do as well. Find the other speakers and engage with them. Thanks, everyone, and take care.
Thank you all so much. Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye. Have lovely days.